Hi and welcome to the Nostalgic Dragon, where I talk about fantasy books and mythological books. And this is the first video about Malazan, and many of you know that I'm very interested of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And as many of you know, I'm on X. There are many subscribers already on this channel, and this is the opening week. If you like this video and you haven't subscribed, you are welcome to like and subscribe, of course. You are also welcome to comment at YouTube or at X if you want to contact or communicate with me directly. So today I will talk about three aspects of Stephen Erickson's preface in Gardens of the Moon. The preface is maybe not something I thought so much about when I started Gardens of the Moon, but I've been rereading the preface now, and I've read all the the books in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, the 10 big books. And I think the preface has some interesting things to tell us. So I'm going to briefly mention three things. There are more things, but three things that are very interesting. Number one, history has no beginning. That's a perspective that Erickson has. Number two, backstory is more or less non-existent. And three, good versus evil. Blurred lines, blurred or gray characters, you could say. You don't know who's good, who's evil. Maybe you don't know if an event was actually good or not. Maybe later you do when you come further into the books, but initially you're not sure what's happening. So the first perspective, history has no beginning. I will start with a quote. Even the rise and fall of civilization are far more muddled on the front and back than what we know. Even, in our everyday life, when we read history in school, we get the impression sometimes that countries or empires has a starting date and then it ends. So it's very linear. It's a linear way of describing empires or civilizations, for example. But when you read Erickson, we don't know when an empire has started, or maybe we can read about it, but it has happened a lot before. Erickson's books takes place during hundreds of thousands of years, more than that actually, and because of that, we have the opportunity to see empires, rise and fall. We can see the process of empires, also a process of character arcs. In another way, we understand that historic events, is repeated, for example, and it makes the world building rather circular rather than linear, and I think that is a very beautiful thing of Erickson to do. And I think we as a reader, we can zoom out, we can zoom in, we can zoom out when we read about Malazan world, empires, countries, etc. When we see there's more of a when we discuss civilization, history, culture, and so on, then we fall back, look from afar, and then there are many characters, as you know, in Malazan, and we get to know a lot of them. Then we zoom in and see the world from their perspective, from the ground, you could say, and we understand that they not always understand things, and we understand that we ourselves not always understand what's happening in Malazan. I think that's a kind of a realistic way of describing things, how we perceive the ordinary world, because we don't know. We imagine our history. History is something imagined. It can be real, of course, but it's also imagined, and it's weaved together, but in Erikson's writing, this is sometimes torn apart in different ways, deconstructed, I think you can say. That should be compared with, for example, Lord of the Rings, where we know the world's history, and we also know who's what the purpose is for the characters, and what fate is put on them. So that makes the reading experience very different. If you would compare Lord of the Rings with Malazan, I don't think you should, but if you do, that's two very, very different perspectives of understanding and writing fantasy. The second perspective has to do with the fact that backstory is non-existent, as Erikson writes in his preface, or he doesn't go into it so much, at least. I think it's true in a sense, but especially in Gardens of the Moon it's true, but if you continue to read the Malazan books, you will understand the characters' history and also their purpose, many of them, not all of them. It's not that it's not there, but it comes in bits and pieces, and you have to be very patient to understand it. And many times you have to figure it out for yourself. I think that's good. I think that's respectful to the reader, and it makes the reading experience much better, and the aha moments much more rewarding. And if you think about it, how is it in real life? Do we know the backstory of other characters or other empire or characters, other persons that we meet, or other empires? Usually we do not. We have an idea. It could be an imagined idea how things actually are, but it might not be true, and sometimes we just don't know. And also for our own lives, we have an idea why we live our lives and why things are as they are. But we cannot know for certain. So I think this is a realistic way of writing history, the history of a fantasy world, but also describing characters, for example, because that's how it is in real life, more or less. We usually don't know what's going to happen or why we do things. We can have an idea, but we can also do something completely different. The third perspective is the gray characterization, you could say, in Erikson's writing. We don't know who's good and evil. Many are in between, and when I read Malazan, I will have maybe a different perspective on which characters that I would like to follow, and which of the characters has a good purpose. You don't even need to think about that, I think, when you read Malazan. I think that's a kind of advice, just to lean back, witness, as it's a very popular word in Malazan. Just witness the story and just feel for yourself. You don't need to take sides. You will get to understand the perspectives of different people, for example. Maybe you start to agree with someone who you thought initially was evil, for example. But even if there is no clear good and evil, it's not a grimdark style, I think. Malazan, grimdark, for me at least, is often filled with hopelessness and almost depressive perspectives of life, and there is no hope. In Malazan, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of opportunity, and I think you get a lot of energy by reading Malazan, because you see these patterns repeating of what people do and what empires do, and you understand that we don't need to be in that kind of circle of life. We can do different things, other things. We can do great things. Erikson writes in his preface that the real world is not so, it's not so clear-cut between good and evil. So why should fantasy be disconnected to reality? I think that's an interesting statement, and I think this gray characterization of the Malazan world and its characters also gives the Malazan books a lot of realistic a realistic perspective and a realistic description. So maybe Malazan is more close to reality than many other fantasy books. Not all, of course. There are many fantasy books and many good fantasy books out there. I usually think that I learn a lot from reading Malazan of myself, of the world we live in. When I read about conflicts in the newspapers, for example, between different countries, I sometimes turn to Malazan to read something, and then I understand my real world or the ongoing conflicts in the world better than when I didn't read Malazan. So you can learn a lot about the human condition, being a human, and what it means in our world. So this was a short video about the preface. I hope you liked it. I will do more videos like this, and this was just an introduction. If you thought this was interesting, if you liked it, you can comment, as I said before, in the field below, or you can write on X. I'm happy to hear your thoughts on my thoughts, and maybe you have other perspectives. But if you haven't done it already, read the preface in Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. I say thank you to you who watched the video, and I'm looking forward to see you again. Bye.